Today was another Friday evening. Grim and tired people hurried home, creating traffic jams and crowding into stuffy buses like sardines. Autumn was showering the city with a nasty rain, making it impossible for me to have a decent smoke. Oh, I almost forgot to introduce myself. My name is Maxime, and I don't even know where to start my story. I don't know because I'm very tired. I'm so tired that even the nightmare that happened in my life has almost stopped bothering me. Right now, I don't care about the rain, the cold of the approaching winter, my soaked feet, or the acrid, bitter smoke eating away at my lungs with each drag. My whole life is going downhill. I dropped out of university, threw away my passport, and am scraping by with hard jobs as a loader and errand boy. But that's not the worst of it. The days will soon get shorter, and I will have no choice but to run to the bus stop after a hard day's work, argue with persistent old ladies, grumbling about their youth and Stalin, or call a taxi and spend my last money just to slam the door of my apartment before it gets dark. It started a year and a half ago. I was in my second year at the Institute and had already started working part-time as a waiter in a small but cozy family restaurant not far from my dorm. By nature, I was quite nimble and friendly, so I quickly fit into the team, and the clients always thanked me with good tips. Life was going on as usual. Late one evening, I was returning to my familiar hole after a shift. It was already quite dark outside, and only the light of the rare city lamps allowed me to avoid stumbling on every stone. I was walking in high spirits, my pocket warmed by a 500-ruble bill left by an especially generous guest. Tomorrow was my day off, and I could sleep in. What else could bring such joy to a student as sleep and some extra cash for small expenses? However, my happiness didn't last long. Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted by a strange feeling inside. My lungs were seized by frozen air. My eyes started to feverishly dart around, trying to spot a potential threat in the darkness. There was nothing unusual around, but the sticky, inexplicable fear wouldn't let me go. I quickened my pace, realizing that my anxiety, gifted to me by childhood and enhanced by my beloved university, was resurfacing. The prestigious institution turned out to be a place for squeezing money and nerves out of students. Oh, if only I had known what suffering I had signed up for with my own money. But now, I'm not a scared freshman anymore. I've been boiling in this pot for 2 years. I know how this dump operates from the inside, and I no longer worry about my studies, yet sudden attacks of anxiety still make themselves known. My attention was caught by what seemed like an ordinary find. Next to a barely working lamp was a small black dog lying completely still. It became immediately clear to me that it wasn't breathing. I shrugged, thinking, probably old, or the local dog hunters got to it, poor dog. In these thoughts, I walked past its body and froze. A new wave of goosebumps ran down my spine, and my hands started trembling from fingertips to collarbones. The dog was dead. I understood that immediately, but its belly, it was hollow. From its chest to its end, there was a gaping hole. There were no organs, and there was very little blood, as if most of it had been drained before the gruesome act and taken away. I stood there, wide-eyed, with almost no air left in my lungs. It felt like if I stayed a bit longer, I too would drop dead next to this unfortunate stray. I think I would have stayed there until morning if I hadn't heard a familiar male voice behind me. Holy shit, what's this? Maxim? What kind of horrors are these? It was Ilya, a tall guy living on the floor above mine. We were classmates. Not exactly friends, but we always greeted each other and smoked during breaks. I told him that I had just come across the poor creature. I also told him about the horrible feeling that had overwhelmed me. Ilya gave me an understanding look and wisely remarked that when you see something like that, your brain immediately starts searching for a potential threat to avoid ending up the same way. And that's normal. I nodded quickly and we hurried back to the dorm. Staying on the street with the corpse of the unfortunate animal was not appealing at all. Ilya was right about the brain's tricks, but he didn't quite understand me. The sticky fear gripped me before I noticed the poor animal. This hadn't happened to me in a long time, and I still didn't know how to explain this coincidence. When I got to our block, I met the gaze of Vadim, my roommate. "Max, what's up? You look as pale as death. Something at work?" I immediately told him what I had seen, knowing how much Vadim was interested in all sorts of creepy stories about various maniacs, mysticism, and catastrophes. As I shared my misadventure with my friend, his expression changed from interest to alarm, and then even to fear. "Max, are you sure you saw the animal right next to the dorm?" "Well, yeah, why?" "I saw the same thing near the store during the day." Vadim began in confusion, and another nasty chill ran down my spine. My friend continued his story. "I went out for groceries at Pyateroshka, and near the entrance on the lawn, a bunch of school kids were gathered, chattering like a flock of seagulls. Some girl was crying, so I went to see what happened. There was a dog too, Max, only it was dark red instead of black. Its insides were missing. It was like they were just ripped out along with part of the belly and organs, and the blood. There was too little blood. With such a wound, the area should have been drenched in it. You understand? Someone drained the blood first and took it as a trophy. I'm telling you." Wait, I interrupted my friend. Vadim was quite the fantasist. I was already scared out of my wits and definitely didn't want to hear stories about some maniac who once acted similarly and now had a follower. Or worse, Jack the Ripper himself had returned from the underworld to continue his horrors on our streets. "I know what you're going to say, and I don't like it at all. And you think I'm thrilled that there's a maniac around here? No one knows for sure yet. We don't know what kind of dogs these are. And anyway, let's go to sleep. We won't get up tomorrow otherwise. Don't you have classes? If you don't get up yourself, I won't wake you." Noticing my irritation, my roommate didn't argue, and we quickly went to bed. The night passed peacefully, as did the whole following week. I almost forgot about what happened. If only I had known that it wasn't over yet. Around noon on Wednesday, I left my classes and, as usual, headed for the smoking area. Today I had another shift at the restaurant, and I didn't want to miss the chance to have a relaxed smoke with my classmates. Vadik ran up to me, nearly knocking me off my feet, and started babbling like a marathoner. "I told you it's a maniac, but you wouldn't listen. Everyone always takes me for a fool, but I was the only one who understood that this is not for nothing." "Wait, what happened?" I stopped him somehow. "What do you mean you don't know?" Vadik, with a distrustful look, told me something that almost made my legs give way and dropped me onto the dirty asphalt. This morning, they found the body of a homeless man not far from the dorm and the store. He was gutted just like those dogs. The cops came, said the body was brought from somewhere else and dumped. That's why there's no blood. You get it? He does it somewhere, probably in his lair. The body had been dead for several days. The cigarette fell out of my hands. I didn't know what to say or do. Standing in the middle of a crowd of my friends and acquaintances, fear was eating me up. Just like in childhood, my lungs constricted and I collapsed at their feet, clutching my chest and gasping for air. It was a real panic attack, a feeling of imminent death and animal terror, of something unimaginable. But if earlier in childhood it could happen without a particular reason, now there was one. I knew exactly what had scared me so much. I was afraid of ending up like that dog, lying gutted and bloodless until morning, waiting for some early passerby or jogger to find my empty body. You can call me an impressionable idiot. Go ahead. We're all brave until we encounter something terrifying in life. Oh, right. I haven't told you how I got my condition. I was 11, an ordinary boy, not afraid of anything, including death, until it crept too close. I had a friend, a best friend. Stjopa and I had known each other since kindergarten, and even went to the same school, insisting on being in the same class. He was always ready to support any of my adventures, especially if I, in turn, could promise that our parents wouldn't find out about our pranks. I remember how once we got into big trouble for pouring liquid glue on the chair of a nasty classmate, Zhenya, hoping to get back at her for her mischief. Zhenya, often out of spite, eavesdropped on our plans for adventures and then invented all sorts of ways to thwart these beginnings. The last straw was when she told our mothers over the phone that we were planning a daytime hike to a flooded quarry near our homes. My mother stayed silent and only dryly referred to the teacher, allegedly saying that it was Kristina Sergeyevna who asked her not to let me leave the house. Stepan's mother, on the other hand, began to scold her son for the unauthorized and dangerous venture, and immediately mentioned the caring classmate who called and worried about the young adventurers. We were not the only ones Zhenya played tricks on. This wonderful person managed to spoil the blood of almost our entire class, spreading rumors about girls pitting boys against each other. She would tell the teacher that the boys had found the answers to a test and didn't even bother to share, or spread rumors that the girl sitting next to her, Lena, was already fooling around with boys. Then, after enjoying the class's mockery, she would defend Lena as if she had nothing to do with it. Moreover, whenever anyone dared to offend Zhenya herself, her furious mother would immediately come to the school, threatening us, the young hooligans, with the juvenile police and the local district officer. So when our patience was exhausted and we decided to take revenge on her, all the kids silently agreed and stubbornly turned a blind eye to how Stepan and I were pouring that very glue. And after the culprit sat on her sticky throne, the entire class burst into peals of laughter. One of the girls even threw gum into her hair for the complete picture. Of course, when the teacher entered the class and saw our improvised show, It was clear from her expression alone that trouble would not be long in coming. Why am I telling all this? Because after our mischievous revenge, Zhenya's mother demanded that our parents be called to school and staged such a grand scandal that our mothers punished us for a whole month without walks and computer games. The only thing that comforted us in those dark days of confinement was the approval of the class and the glory of vengeful heroes. But the thirst for adventure grew stronger with each passing day, like a coiled spring. After gaining the long-awaited freedom, simple walks no longer seemed interesting to us. One day, another great idea popped into my young head. Step! You can't imagine what I've come up with. Do you remember the abandoned building near the old clinic? Let's go there. The old lady said that there is still a morgue and wards for the insane with scribbled walls. Are you crazy? Stepan rolled his eyes. I've told you 100 times, I'm not going anywhere at night. My folks won't even let me stay overnight at Grandpa's. And now what? Say that you invited me over. They won't let me go, or at worst, they'll call your parents. Then we definitely won't go anywhere. Who said anything about night? We'll go during the day. The homeless sleep there at night. They also say Satanists sacrifice cats there. There should be pentagrams, too. Let's go right after school. You'll be home in a couple of hours. Annoying Zhenya appeared in the corridor again, and we decided to discuss our plans later. If my next idea was thwarted again, I would definitely strangle that pest. After thinking it over, Stepan agreed, and I couldn't wait for that very day to set off for the long-awaited adventure. We prepared in advance, took flashlights, a couple of sandwiches, water, and various useful items from home. We discussed all the details, and on the appointed day, eagerly awaited the end of classes to dive into the world of mysteries and secrets of the abandoned hospital as soon as possible. As soon as the final bell rang, we quickly put on our jackets and ran out of the school. We walked briskly, occasionally breaking into a run, and within 20 minutes we were standing in front of the dilapidated building, deep in one of the streets. Well, am I first or ladies first? Stepan winked cheerfully. Just go already while I take your mother to the movies? Shut up. Stepan frowned and darted into the passage. Following his example, I went after him. Inside, we found nothing interesting except graffiti and a couple of crooked pentagrams. But the next room greeted us with piles of medical records and instruments. Look here, I called my friend, showing him a straitjacket smeared with some dirt. We'll tie you up, psycho. Stepan winked cheerfully. And deliver you to your folks on a gurney. Take this particularly violent one. Better we tie up Zhenya's mom. She's the one who really belongs in a madhouse. I joined in and we burst into loud laughter. After searching all the adjacent rooms, we found many interesting artifacts. Some records scribbled in a doctor's scroll, broken flasks, scissors, and more. Next, our attention was drawn to a fallen safe. But after fiddling with it for almost an hour, we gave up. Apparently, our childhood skills were insufficient to handle the iron box. Wandering a bit more in the rooms, I noticed Stepan's interest beginning to wane. Max, maybe we should head home. What else is there to do here? He started his usual whining. Wait, we haven't been to the second floor yet. Maybe we'll find something interesting there. I've heard so many stories about this place. I don't believe there's nothing here I tried to persuade my friend. There's nothing there, Stepan rebuffed. Well, let's check quickly and go home. We still have time. Are you scared? I played my last card. We were very young and each of us was terribly afraid of being labeled a coward, which I gladly exploited. I'm not scared at all, Stepan began to snap back. You're the coward. Then he sighed and added hoarsely, let's go. Approaching the entrance to the second floor, a needle of doubt pricked me too, but it was too late to retreat. Having dared my friend, I had committed myself to the additional adventure. Ascending the rickety wooden stairs to the half-ruined floor, we cautiously peered into the darkness of the landing. Stepan turned and rolled his eyes, showing me his triumphant face. There's nothing here, buddy. We just wasted time. I told you. But he didn't have time to finish. As if by the will of an evil fate, the wooden steps creaked and collapsed, taking us into the darkness of the lower floors. I don't know how long I lay unconscious or how I survived, but when I opened my eyes, I was surrounded by the darkness of the basement, cut by faint moonbeams seeping through a hole in the ceiling. A terrible pain split my head. It felt like I had been hit on the head with a sledgehammer. My eyes quickly adjusted to the darkness, but the abundance of debris, rubble, and haphazardly piled objects prevented me from seeing the room entirely. In an instant, realization washed over me with a wave of sticky anxiety. It was already night. How long had I been lying there? What would my mom say? And ultimately, where was Stepan? Despite the severe pain, I got up and began to search the room as quickly as my condition allowed. Among the clutter and debris, I saw the outline of my friend's hand. He lay relatively nearby, but a large piece of railing and steps obscured most of him from my view. Running to my friend, I began to uncover him, my head splitting with wild pain, and my muscles nearly ceasing to obey from fear, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't leave my friend in trouble. I couldn't leave him there. As soon as I could see his face, I started to feel and pat Stepan's cold cheeks. My friend was breathing but not responding to anything. Stepka! Stepka! Wake up! We need to get out of this hole! My friend didn't respond, and part of his body was still pinned by debris. Step up, buddy. Why are you like this? What will I tell your mom? Realizing I couldn't revive my friend on my own, I tried to move the large piece of railing from him, but my child's body clearly lacked the strength. At that moment, I understood that the only right decision was to leave my friend in place and try to get out myself so I could bring help here. But stubbornness and fear that my friend would wake up in pitch darkness, pinned by debris and without me, wouldn't let me leave. However, soon something happened that made me firmly decide to get out of there at any cost. We were not alone. Something moved in the depths of one of the neighboring rooms, quietly and almost silently, but the abundance of debris on the floor prevented the uninvited guest from remaining unnoticed. I was about to shout, "Who's there?" But a terrible guess almost immediately illuminated my consciousness. I was shouting throughout the hospital, crying and trying to uncover my friend from the rubble. Whoever it was, if they wanted to help, they wouldn't sneak up quietly and so slowly. My body was paralyzed with fear. Someone unfamiliar continued to approach like a predator. I couldn't see who or what was moving there, but with each step, my heart skipped a beat. I was lying on my side in absolute darkness next to my motionless friend. The breath of fear enveloped my whole being. My muscles didn't obey, and my lips seemed stitched with invisible threads. A few minutes stretched into an eternity, and then the almost inaudible rustling ceased altogether. The only sound was the muffled breathing of my friend and the uneven beating of my heart. My gaze stopped at the pale, barely moving face of Stepan. Gradually, reason began to overcome fear. I needed to get out, immediately save my friend, or we would both die here in this damn hospital. Gradually, I calmed down and began to collect my strength. There was nothing nearby except debris and dark corridors filled with incomprehensible sounds. Summoning all my will, I stood up, my legs shaking uncontrollably. The darkness was no longer terrifying. I started climbing over the debris towards the exit. If we didn't leave here now, we would stay here forever. After wandering in the dark, I finally saw a gap in the collapsed wall. A weak moonlight filtered through it, showing the way out. I hurriedly ran to it, turning around to take one last look at my friend. Stepan lay motionless, the debris pressing his small body to the cold floor. A silent tear rolled down my cheek. Stepka, I'll come back. I swear. The hole was small, but allowed me to crawl through. I quickly crawled out into the night air, which felt like a sip of water after a long thirst. I stood outside and caught my breath, clutching my aching head. A thought flashed. I had to find help. My phone was left inside my backpack in the room where we found the straitjacket, but I couldn't go back, risking encountering that unknown creature again. So I decided to head to the nearest house, even if it meant waking the residents at such a late hour. I ran down the deserted street, my legs still shaking, occasionally looking back as if expecting to see that horror right behind me. Soon, I saw the lights of a residential building. My heart was pounding like mad. I ran to the first entrance and started ringing all the doorbells, hoping that someone would respond. Finally, a sleepy voice answered the intercom. "Who is it? Please, help. My friend is in danger. Call the police, please," I shouted, barely able to catch my breath. The intercom was silent for a moment, and then the door buzzed, opening. I dashed inside and started banging on the doors, shouting for help. Soon, a middle-aged man appeared in a robe. "Kid, what's going on? Calm down," he said, looking at me worriedly. "We were at the old hospital. My friend is trapped. He's unconscious. Please, help," I blurted out, tears streaming down my face. The man quickly took out his phone and called the police, explaining the situation. Within minutes, a police car and an ambulance arrived. They questioned me briefly, then we hurried back to the hospital. The officers and paramedics carefully climbed through the hole I had crawled out of and soon found Stepan. They managed to free him and carried him out on a stretcher. My friend was alive, but still unconscious. They took us both to the hospital, where doctors examined us thoroughly. My parents were notified, and soon they arrived, pale and worried sick. I was too exhausted to explain everything, but they hugged me tightly, grateful I was safe. Stepan was hospitalized for several days, but eventually recovered. He couldn't remember much about the incident, but we both knew we had narrowly escaped a terrible fate. Our adventure ended there. We never spoke about it to anyone, and the abandoned hospital became a forbidden topic among us. The horror of that night remained etched in our memories forever. a grim reminder of the dangers hidden in the dark places we dared to explore. Two sharp teeth protruded from its mouth like a beaver's. Blood dripped from them. My childish imagination didn't add new details. On the contrary, last time, the darkness didn't allow me to see all the horrific details that were now revealed to my eyes. The creature raised its head, and its eyes stared directly at my window. Animal fear ran down my spine, and my heart leaped to my throat, making it feel like I was about to spit it out. A few seconds of staring felt like an eternity of terror. A click, and the monster vanished into the bushes, while I stood frozen in place. As soon as I snapped out of it, I rushed to wake my neighbor. "Hey, buddy! Wake up! Wake up!" I started shaking Vadim by the shoulders, but he slept like the dead. Not a single muscle moved on his face. Pulling off the blanket, I saw something that made the scream freeze in my throat. My friend was completely empty, and the blood left in him wouldn't be enough to soak the blanket. Everything was blurry. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the horrific sight. Nausea surged to my throat and then receded, threatening to spill my meager dinner onto the floor. My knees trembled, my thoughts were confused, and no rational thought visited my pulsing consciousness. I don't know how long I spent figuring out what to do. It seemed like there was only one way out. With difficulty, I gathered my things, grabbing the essentials into a small sports bag, covered my friend with a blanket from head to toe, and sat opposite until morning, trying not to lose my mind. With the first rays of the sun, I left the dormitory and headed to the city bus station to get as far away from the city as possible. Now I'm in another city with a different name. Surviving on odd jobs, I rent the worst apartment in a residential area. The elderly landlady couldn't tell my homemade fake passport from a real one. So I easily secured my corner with a heavy iron door and window bars left over from the turbulent 90s. I lie to my parents on the phone, telling them everything is fine, feeding them made-up stories about university life. Surprisingly, the incident at the dormitory was never reported, and no one even looked for me. Only my classmates kept calling me at first and writing long messages in all messengers asking where I and Vadim had gone. It seems they hid the unfortunate body for investigative purposes or to avoid panic among students. I didn't know for sure, but I never logged into social networks under my nickname again, and I left the messages unanswered. It seemed to be over. No new victims in the new city, but the terrible memories still don't let me close my eyes peacefully. Every night, I dream of the moment when I pulled the blanket off the empty, gutted body of my neighbor. Icy horror grips my lungs, preventing me from taking even a single miserable breath, and I fall to the floor trying to do something. The door to the room opens, and the terrible monster, barely fitting in the doorway, stands on the threshold, holding little Stjopa's hand in a torn grayish t-shirt. The dead friend's face twists into an evil smile and an angry look full of silent accusation. Then he says, "I have a new friend, and we want to play." I don't know what that creature is or where it came from. Did we awaken something in that abandoned hospital? Or were we just in the wrong place at the wrong time? I only knew one thing for sure. Whatever killed my friend and all those poor souls will find me again. It's only a matter of time. For several days now, a noose made from an old rope has been persistently staring at me from the ceiling. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. I'll allow myself to give you some advice. Don't walk alone on dark streets. Who knows what's hiding in the darkness? A neat green notebook with these notes was found by officers called by the landlady, who found the body of the young man hanged in the apartment. Neighbors had complained to her about a strange smell.